Skyrim is full of legendary heroes, powerful wizards, and fierce warriors, but what if you throw all that aside for a life dedicated to cheese hoarding? Is it possible to rise to power armed only with wills of goat cheese and a relentless dairy addiction? Time to find out. Can you beat Skyrim as a cheese goblin? Now, like I said, we'll be hoarding as much cheese as goblinly possible, but this challenge is far more than meets the eye. We all know the standard slog of looting every corpse we find in hopes of finding some new gear to use, but our goblin friend has no use for such trinkets. In fact, all he cares about, better yet, all he sees, is cheese. So that means we'll be limited to our frankly overpowered goblin magic that turns any living being into a pillar of cheese. All this to fuel the goblin's everlasting lactose greed. That means no armor, no weapons, no potions, just cheese. Now, without further ado, let the chaos commence. After quickly creating our mini green goblin, yikes, I used my creative genius to give him a suitable name, Gobble Cheese. Yeah, I know it sounds bad, but trust me when I say Gobble Cheese stays true to his name. After narrowly escaping death, not once, not twice, but 3 times, our hands were finally cut free, which meant it was time for Gobble Cheese to start unleashing the hellish chaos of the cheese lords upon these puny mortals. Things went according to plan at first, getting through the tutorial without so much as a drop of sweat on our brow, but things were just getting started. Not one for small talking with the Riverwood locals, I took the Waterway Express to Whiterun, where I convinced the local guard that letting me in, a random goblin with cheese magic in his hands, was the best and only option for him. After talking dragons with the Jarl, our friendly neighborhood wizard Sovngarde requested of us a seemingly simple task: dive deep into spider-infested ruins and rip a stone tablet out of the hands of an undead dragonborn. Like I said, simple. On my way there, I made sure to render anything that dared move in my direction into those precious, precious wheels of cheese. Cheese, 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 cheese. Clearing the temple went as it usually does, just with a far cheesier presence. In fact, taking down our first mini-boss, the Frostbite giant spider, was easy breezy cheesy. But after doing so, I made the grave mistake of turning the only golden claw owner into a pillar of cheese. Meaning, not only could I not progress the game, but this means our cheese magic is useless in attaining said claw. Or was it? You see, there is but one other spell a master cheese wielder such as Gobble Cheese possesses, a form of telekinesis colloquially known as cheese bending. It allows us to pick up cheese, and only cheese, with our mind and launch it at unsuspecting victims. The only catch is pretty much in the name. It's cheese, so the damage output pretty much amounts to a whopping 10 points every successful cheese to face combination. Certainly not an ideal situation, but I did what I had to and put the cheese beat down on our deviant runner like I was Cheese Wit. Now that we've got the golden claw, things began to pick up pace again, sending as many restless undead as I could into their cheesy purgatories. I guess you could say that they were beyond saving? No? Nobody? Alright then. That was until I was met once again with the crushing realization that the Druger Overlord had the stone tablet on its person, and with no way to pickpocket it off of him, I had to resort once again to bouncing cheese wheels off his head until he begged for mercy. After spending damn near 30 minutes tossing cheese and verbally berating him with cheese puns, he decided to give up and left this temporal plane for good, which meant the stone tablet was finally ours and we could get the hell out of this cheese-filled nightmare for good. But, as the old saying goes, it's out of the milk vat and into the aging cave. We had a new problem on our hands: dragons. There was one just outside of Whiterun, and because Gobble Cheese proved his worth in the trials of that last dungeon, the Jarl called upon him once more to take care of it as discreetly as possible. But since Gobble Cheese barely understands English, all he heard was cheese, 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 kill dragon, cheese. Upon meeting with the Whiterun guards at the watchtower, the dragon wasted no time coming to say hi. Oh, well, that was easy. Well, after absorbing the now cheese-ridden soul of that dragon, it was safe to say this little cheese goblin was even more powerful than we thought. He is the one true cheddar-born. And after telling the Jarl about that little episode and this new riveting discovery of our lactose-infused bloodstream, he decided to send me to the Greybeards way up on the tallest, harshest mountain in all of Skyrim. Thanks, buddy. Nothing quite like a little hike to burn off all this extra cheese weight. After traveling for many cheese-infused miles, I found myself at High Hrothgar. Letting the Greybeard stalk his ear off for 2 to 3 business days, Gobble Cheese passed each and every one of the Greybeard's trials with flying colors, which brings us to their final trial, snagging an ancient Nordhorn from the belly of another massive undead-laced crypt. Sounds like a job for literally any other great warrior in Skyrim, but no. These old coots insisted a 2-foot goblin with an eating disorder would suffice. Probably not their best move, but I digress. And without another thought on the matter, I shoved forth to Ustengrav. It wasn't very difficult getting there, as pretty much anything that looked at me funny got cheese-pillared. And honestly, the same could be said for most of the crypt, including the most powerful of the Druger among them. The undead did not stand a chance against my dairy-based wrath. Clearly, they've never had to deal with lactose intolerance. Upon clearing the dungeon and devouring all the Drugers turned cheese wills, as usual, it was all for naught, as the blades have a way of meddling in affairs of which they do not belong. I'd say it's a talent, but honestly that feels too complimentary. Following the directions on the note that was left, Gobble Cheese hightailed it to Riverwood Inn and tried to bed down for the night. But as it seems, there's no rest for the wicked in Skyrim, as the blade member in question, Delphine, burst through the door like the Kool-Aid Man. Oh boy. Delphine handed over the Windcaller horn that I was supposed to retrieve for the Greybeard's approval, and then went off about all these questions and speculations regarding the cheddar-born. The conversation was pretty one-sided, as Delphine was hell-bent on deciphering whether or not this short goblin possessed the power of a dragon. So I decided to cut it short, and we traveled over yonder to a grave of a great dragon, where Alduin, the dude that started all this, was steady reanimating it. I got the drop on him and turned Alduin into a pile of cheese, though without knowing the repercussions of turning a soul-eating, bloodthirsty dragon into feta, I decided to reload and deal with his friend first. Ah yes, and with that staggeringly difficult battle, Delphine was of course very impressed with my cheese wielding. So much so that she now insisted I go infiltrate the Thalmor embassy and search for clues on the rising dragon menace. But we've got an issue. I don't know if you've noticed, but Gobble Cheese is a tiny goblin man with pointy ears, green skin, and likely smells like a charcuterie board. And to top it off, Skyrim doesn't have many goblin guests to begin with, let alone ones that regular high-profile Thalmor parties. Nevertheless, Delphine crafted up another harebrained scheme to get us inside, and after giving our informant/smuggler everything Gobble Cheese just absolutely could not live without, cheese, I put on a change of clothes and went inside. Skipping past the usual process of diversions and sneaking around, I went on an all-out cheese spree, condemning and eating the cheesy remains of once living, breathing, sentient, you know what? That. The Thalmor are horrible people, and they can get bent for all I care. After blazing through the rest of his crew, the Thalmor wizard stood guard on the exit, and while normally I would have shown him the same cheesy lack of respect as his pupils, I knew he had the key to the escape route. So, you know what that means. Lots and lots of cheese bending. After scarfing down nearly 100 cheese wills and letting loose the kraken that is the goat cheese, I was now suffering from dairy madness. But on the bright side, the Thalmor wizard was down and I finally had the key to the exit. That's it, I'm done. But I was in fact not done. Yep, that very same key that I killed the wizard for was in the chest all along, and I just wasted about 20 minutes bludgeoning him to death with the cheese will. But what's done is done, so I hopped back on the saddle and continued through the maze of an escape route. Splattering cheese everywhere I went, I eventually wound up in the interrogation room, because no embassy is complete without one, I guess. Though by the time I blasted through the guards, I found that the way forward was once again locked, and this time there was no special chest or duplicate key. So I'm sure you can guess what happened next. After taking out the guard, I had the key, and within no time I was free and made my way back to Delphine to deliver the news. She didn't take the lack of dragon knowledge well, but it really didn't matter, as now it was time to hunt down her friend Esbern, hidden away in the Riften sewers. Because where else would you find someone important? Don't worry though, I won't bore you with what came next, but let's just say that all that cheese wielding practice really paid off. With Esbern back on our side, it was time to hunt down Alduin's wall, and these two dorks wanted to tag along, but gobble cheese ain't about that life, so I broke for the hills. But damn, let me tell you, being a cheddar-born is not a safe occupation by any stretch of the imagination. I was jumped by 3 separate dragons on my way to this ancient palace. 3, each more terrifying than the last. It's almost as if someone was trying to thwart our challenge run. But not today, Todd Howard. As let's not forget, gobble cheese is pretty much a god amongst men with these cheesy myths of mass destruction. Finally reaching Skyrim Temple, I ran through the lore dumping and character development all the way to the Alduin wall. I had hoped that by some grace of God, my turtle speed cohorts would have picked up the pace by now, but that was just wishful thinking, I guess, as our good friends still had a ways to go before they'd catch up. So I literally got up and made dinner while Gobble Cheese was likely daydreaming of floating on clouds of cream cheese. After those certified yappers were done hearing themselves talk, I was finally left to my own devices once more, and as such, I made my way back to Hrothgar to discuss the happenings of my previous escapades, to which I was just shunned by the Greybeards for even associating with the Blades. Eventually Parthenax put those hermits in their place, and they made way for the cheddar-born to scale the harshest, highest point of the mountain. Not quite the standing ovation I was hoping for, but hey, I'll take what I can get. I made my way up to the throat of the world, leaving pillars of cheese everywhere I turned. Upon peaking the mountain, I was met with a 3-ton philosophical dragon, Parthenax, that wanted to debate the meaning of life and all that. But like I said before, our little green homie still barely understands English, and he certainly wasn't about to try to decipher the Dova language on top of it. So I told him to cut to the chase, and within no time, our quest turned from finding the dragon to finding the Elder Cheese. I mean Elder Scroll. Yeah, Elder Scroll. I think all this cheese talk's really starting to get to me. Anyway, I traced the meager breadcrumbs I had on the Elder Scroll all the way to the College of Winterhold, where I hit up the local library for a little impromptu reading sesh. But after Gobble Cheese opened up his first book only to see what looked like hieroglyphics, he swore in that very moment to stick to cheese and physical violence from now on. So without a true lead on where to go, I just had to use my intuition and 1,000+ hours of playtime to track down Septimus, a man that had dedicated his entire life to the Elder Scrolls. To any normal onlooker, Septimus was just a crazy hermit that lived alone in an ice cave for far too long. But to be honest, Gobble Cheese and him got along just fine. Takes one to know one, I guess. With the info I needed, I made haste to the Dwemer ruins and found that the Dwemer metal turns to cheese just as easily as flesh does. Upon utterly annihilating the entire cave system, I found myself at Blackreach, my favorite location in all of Skyrim. And I'm dead serious, but it would be nice if it wasn't constantly trying to kill me though. I wished I could stay longer, but the Elder Scroll was but mere steps away at this point. So I worked my magic on the controls, meaning that I pressed the doohickey until the thingamajig gave me the result I wanted, and voila, the Elder Cheese was now mine. With a fragment of the Elder Knowledge in my back pocket, I made my way back up to the throat of the world, where I unleashed the beast. After tripping like I just took 40 millivanilligrams, I learned the Dragon Wrench out. Just in time too, as Alduin decided to show his ugly mug, and the fight was on. Now, I probably don't need to explain it this time, but I'm gonna. Turning this dude into a pile of cheese, while far easier, would likely have a less than ideal consequence on our completion of the game henceforth. So, strap in ladies and gents, this is about to be a fight of a lifetime. And while slapping the devil down with my cheese of doom wasn't exactly a walk in the park, after an unsightly amount of time, I emerged victorious over the World Eater. But at what cost? Nah, I'm just messing with you. But that battle did take entirely too long just for him to fly off to the afterlife. I guess it's kind of ironic when you think about it. Now, we already know where Alduin's heading, but in order to get there, I had to somehow get a hold of a dragon, and from which I could fly my way to the entry of Sovngarde, where he now resides. Trouble is, the war between the Imperials and the Nords was still raging. Because of this, Jarl Balgruuf wasn't keen on helping me trap a dragon in his palace, even though it was literally designed for it. So, against his better judgment, Gobblecheese put his big boy pants on and handled the truce negotiations as any goblin would, by just kinda sitting there and waiting for it to be over. Next thing I knew, they settled on a truce, and the Jarl was now much more willing to harbor an enormous dragon in his palace. Now, in all my time of playing this game, I was under the impression that I had to significantly damage the dragon in order to trap it, but as it turns out, if you just aggro him by sending a flying cheese wheel at his head, he'll follow you into the keep where they'll capture him, no matter what health he's at. I feel like I really missed that part of the instructions. Regardless though, the dragon was now captured, and bada bing bada boom, I was on a janky ride to Skuldafn. Now, Skuldafn itself proved to be pretty easy, surprisingly. That's because there weren't many enemies that required cheese bludgeoning throughout the place, with the stark exception of one particular Druger. Yep, it's that time again, folks. Our target's got the key, which meant the next 30 minutes of my life were dedicated to smacking a reanimated corpse on the head with a block of goat cheese. And let me tell ya, in that moment, I was really grateful I couldn't smell the nightmaric odors that likely enveloped that room. With that dragon claw now sitting proudly in my possession, I pushed forward towards the portal of Sovngarde. Now, normally I would say the battle with the dragon priest was difficult, but yeah. Turns out if you kill him before he picks up his staff, the portal just remains open, which was a wonderful surprise. But that didn't last long, as Tucson decided to start waterboarding me, so to speak. But don't get me wrong, just like any self-respecting cheese goblin, I immediately tried to turn him into a pile of cheese like the foes that came before him. But as far as the game is considered, Cheese Tucson is still very much alive, and thus crossing the bridge to the Hall of Valor resulted in a nice smiting from the big boss. And there was really no way around this, believe me, I tried multiple times. But a little challenge could never stand in the way of Gobblecheese and his grand destiny to obtain the Great Cheese Will, said to only be found by turning the most powerful of enemies into cheese, aka Alduin. And unsurprisingly, taking the better half of an hour, I beat down the Sovngarde bouncer within an inch of his life, all thanks to the awesome power of goat cheese. With the last mini-boss now defeated, only one dared stand between Gobblecheese and his precious ethereal cheese will, Alduin. So, with a nod of approval from the gang, we headed forth to the hunting grounds. After doing a little spring cleaning with our voice, Alduin's fury had betrayed him as he reared his big ol' ugly head once more. Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that simply turning him into cheese wasn't gonna cut it. So, using every random exotic cheese I'd collected up to this point, I gave Alduin the greatest cheese-related beatdown since sliced Gouda. And with a final slap of the OG goat cheese, Alduin was defeated, and Gobblecheese had nearly completed his destiny. But, like some kind of cosmic joke, Alduin exploding into a million pieces meant there was nothing left for Gobblecheese to render into the Great Cheese Will. I suppose that means that the hunt is not yet finished for Gobblecheese. But as for this challenge run, well, as you can see, nothing can stand in the way of a headstrong, cheese-headed goblin, not even cheese itself. All this to say that yes, you can indeed beat Skyrim as a cheese goblin. Well, that does it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed turning the world into cheese wills. And if you did, feel free to peruse the rest of the channel. We got plenty more chaos where that comes from. This has been the Mythical Pickle, and on behalf of the Pickle Fellowship, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, remember to smile.